Bob Mueller's testimony now 2 days away, and here's what we're learning right now. First, Mueller will discuss the criminal evidence against Trump for 5 hours before 2 committees. Second, he will deliver an opening statement. That's new. Third, Bill Barr's DOJ is again stepping in, something we've been tracking on this story from the start. New reporting tonight. Barr's staff stressing to Mueller that anything Mueller knows, which is not in the report, should be treated as, quote, presumptively privileged from disclosure. Let's stop right there. Well, why does that sound a little odd? Well, I think you know why. Bob Mueller is the one who errs on the side of not commenting and disclosing. It was Mueller who stayed quiet while Barr released letters and excerpts that mischaracterized the Mueller report before it was ever released. So when Barr and his staff are the ones demanding less disclosure, it obviously stands out. And of course, it was Barr's Justice Department that flat out pushed Mueller's top prosecutors not to testify at all. And Barr has also opined against this week's hearing, knocking it, in his view, as a, quote, unnecessary public spectacle. So for all this talk about how Wednesday's hearing could end up being a dud or dry or a redo, it does appear that people inside the Trump administration are still concerned about Mueller and his team talking. Because even in his careful style, Bob Mueller was, in one sense, blunt in his last and only public remarks to date, saying his probe simply did not allow him to conclude Donald Trump did not commit a crime.
As set forth in the report, after that investigation, if we had had confidence that the president clearly did not commit a crime, we would have said so.
And they didn't say so. Now, that implicit rebuke of Trump does not mean that Bob Mueller is now standing with the president's critics. Far from it. Remember, as a legal matter, when Mueller steps in front of the world Wednesday, he will be a hostile witness under subpoena. He is prepping to be pressed and to push back. He's doing in-depth briefings, mock sessions to mimic the big event. So he's ready to take on these committee chairs who have their own view of what Mueller found.
We want Bob Mueller to bring it to life, to talk about what's in that report.
The report presents very substantial evidence that the president is guilty of high crimes and misdemeanors.
It's a pretty damning set of facts that involve a presidential campaign in a close race, welcoming help from a hostile foreign power. He is a essentially unindicted co-conspirator.
Let Mueller present those facts to the American people and then see where we go from there.
There are damning facts in the Mueller report. But some Democrats want more than a dry, factual presentation. They want to press Bob Mueller under oath to say in English what the Mueller report only said in lawyer jargon, that there is substantial evidence against Trump, that it comes from his own staff, and that it suggests he committed multiple crimes in office. Let me bring in our experts tonight. Richard Stengel was a top diplomat in the Obama administration and former managing editor of Time. Caroline Polisi is a criminal defense attorney who represented George Papadopoulos and dealt with people in the Mueller probe directly. And Nick Ackerman, a former Watergate special prosecutor. Good evening to each of you.
Good evening.
A great panel, if I may say so, on this big event that everyone is waiting for, that the administration is apparently uncomfortable with. Nick, what does it mean when the Democrats want more from Mueller than they will probably get, and when Bill Barr wants less or nothing from Mueller?
Either side doesn't have to come out on this thing. All they need to bring out are the facts that are in this report. What they need to do is go through the 8 instances of obstruction of justice on which Bob Mueller has found an obstructive act, corrupt intent, and a nexus to a proceeding that Trump was trying to obstruct. And then on top of it, they also have the evidence relating to the break-in to the Democratic National Committee. They've got a statement right in that report that says, but for the fact that the Nationals, the two crimes that relate to the theft of property, which Mueller says, but for the fact that these 2 crimes only relate to tangible property, goods, that he considered using those against people for trafficking in the stolen documents from the Democratic National Committee. So They should take that statement, juxtapose it to what Trump was doing with respect to WikiLeaks and what the campaign was doing to WikiLeaks, and then they should also go into the conspiracy relating to the social media, where they have evidence from Rick Gates, the deputy campaign manager to the campaign manager, Paul Manafort, who basically was instructing Gates over a regular period of time throughout the campaign to provide Konstantin Kilimnik with the polling data that was the absolute demographic material that could be used to micro-target Hillary Clinton voters and suppress that vote.
Your point is that's in the report. It matters whether or not Mueller found it to be chargeable, and he couldn't find anything chargeable against the president under his analysis. The hearing should really put that before everyone. I want to bring in Stengel, who is both a longtime journalist and a diplomat. As a diplomat, you smooth over differences.
Yes, I'm an undiplomatic diplomat.
Okay, good. As a journalist, you look for the gaps. And I ask you to look at the diplomacy, also known as the spin, and then the real gaps in what I'm going to read from this new report tonight, that Mr. Barr, who represents Donald Trump, who they all said, oh, it's fine, dry, dud, do-over, no big deal. We're not worried about this hearing now, that says that they have been extensively pressing Mueller. They don't want to place Mueller's team in front of lawyers in the DOJ, but reading here from this, they say, okay, we want to place lawyers in the room, but they'd have little recourse to prevent Mueller from going off script and reveal details of his investigation that the White House considers off limits. That basically, because they're not going to put people in the room to muzzle him, they've been extensively meeting
How could
before
they even do
today.
that?
Well, they've been meeting with him saying everything that's not in the report proper is presumptively privileged. What's going on here?
The DOJ has been meeting with Mueller beforehand?
They've been telling his people, so
Yeah.
maybe through intermediaries,
Yeah.
they've been telling his people extensively, DOJ, I mean, this is the headline, Mueller should limit his testimony to the report, and they're afraid of anything else.
So, res ipsa loquitur. That's Latin for the thing speaks for itself. That is Bob Mueller's philosophy. And of course, that doesn't exist except in the 18th century. What they are worried about is that Bob Mueller, standing there, talking directly to camera, answering questions, will bring this alive in a way that a 448-page report just never can be. And the thing that as a journalist, that I would look for, if I'm going for the absolute nut, and by the way, I wouldn't do the Perry Mason thing, because you're never going to get a Perry Mason moment when you're interviewing Perry Mason, right? But the question is...
Perry Mason paradox.
Why? There you go. The question is, why didn't Mueller indict him? Was it because the president didn't commit a crime, or because there was the jurisdiction, the Office of Legal Counsel guidelines from the Justice Department saying you can't indict a sitting president? That would be the one question I would want to have clarity on. And the problem is that he's probably just going to say what's exactly in the report, which he said in that, brief press conference.
He'll
that
never
he had.
answer that question.
You say he'll never answer.
Never.
You dealt
Never
with
in a
his
million
team.
years.
Take a look at how he's ducked in the past.
Yeah.
I hesitate to speculate because I have just a piece of the puzzle also.
But I would have to check to make absolutely certain. In every investigation, and particularly a fast-moving investigation, there are steps that are taken that may or may not work out. It's very difficult to generalize or to reach some sort of understanding or make progress with that generalization.
What's so interesting here is that even in the face of all of this, they're still scared he may go rogue. They're still a little bit scared that 1% possibility. Everything we know about Bob Mueller, he's a rule follower. Look, he's a private citizen now. He doesn't really have to listen to the DOJ, and we know this sort of like presumptive privilege isn't a really legal thing.
Is this not a thing in your view?
It's not a thing, and it's been well documented that there is no blanket executive
Is it not a
privilege.
thing?
No,
They
there's
would have
not.
to-
The only-
Okay, so complete the point. So there's an agreement here that it's not a thing. So what is it?
So, well, the point is that they're really scared of this very minute chance that he could be so upset that he would fly in the face of his whole history, everything that he's ever lived for, which is that he sticks to the books, he sticks to the four corners of the reports and everything that we know about him, that there's a small possibility that, again, he may go off script and give information that they think could be damaging. That's just not going to happen.
Right, and then it goes to what the president did today, Nick, which is you could say, well, he's always mixed. He says, oh, this guy's got conflicts, but, take his word for the way I've mischaracterized his findings. But he does appear still concerned about what's going to happen. It's not just easy breezy. Take a look.
We had no collusion, no obstruction. We had no nothing. We had a total no collusion finding, the phony investigation where the report was written. It said no collusion. There was no obstruction. Robert Mueller, I know he's conflicted. There's a lot of conflicts that he's got, including the fact that his best friend is Comey. But he's got conflicts with me, too. He's got big conflicts with me. He still ruled, and I respect him for it, he still ruled no collusion, no obstruction.
Well, that's the whole problem. If you read through this report and you just pull out the facts that are there, forget him going rogue. The fact remains, once you put all that evidence out in the obstruction, there was obstruction. There's no question. The facts speak for themselves. The problem is the public has not had the opportunity to zero in on those facts.
And I think that's why the stakes are high, even if people feel this is not ideally timed, that Donald Trump may be on to a political propaganda strategy by trying to make everyone feel that this is somehow, quote unquote, older news, or why are we still talking about that? Trump understands how to kind of appeal to things that may sound like they're vaguely in the ballpark, even though they're not actually true. The fact that there's been a methodical process and that there was a subpoena doesn't tell you anything about the underlying facts. I want to do two things. I want to get Rick back in, but I want you to pick out, because I see what you have here.
Yeah, I got everything.
You pick out the page that you would most like to ask Mueller about, that you think is most important for him to be asked about in the hearing. Wait, you get a minute for your homework of what you would ask. Neil Katyal said, one good question would be, did you find there was, quote, no obstruction? And Mueller could say no, if that's what he would say. Did you find there was, quote, no collusion? And Mueller could say no. And that would be a real evisceration of what Barr, his boss, has claimed.
By the way, Ari, I did not get the memo to bring my copy of the Mueller report here today. I'm feeling like a little bereft.
I carry this around with me all the time.
But I'm going to mention one pet peeve I have about as a person who's testified before the House before. The problem is each member gets 5 minutes, and each member is thinking probably as much about people back home as he is thinking about the witness. And what happens is, instead of going sequentially trying to figure something out, each person tries to get his own Perry Mason moment, and they come to nothing.
You're obsessed with Perry Mason.
But with the Democrat, yes. But you know what? And nobody, under the age of 50 even knows who that is. But the problem is,
fact check false,
is that to get Mueller to actually say something that might be potentially revealing, they have to work together to get the questions in a sequential order, rather than each one doing his or her own questions for 5 minutes.
Well, I have one quick question while we're doing references, because Caroline's been giving us guidance, and you're a very sharp lawyer yourself. Perry Mason, you say people do know that over 50. What about Matlock?
Yes. No.
Atticus Finch.
Oh, yes.
Everything knows
Kidding?
that.
Yes.
Okay.
My goodness.
You got your homework ready?
Well, sure. I mean, first of all, Mr. Mueller, I'd like to direct your attention to page 176, which is a section relating to Roger Stone and the dissemination of the stolen emails from the Democratic National Committee. It's a fact, is it not, Mr. Mueller, if you look at that footnote, that your office considered charging people with the theft of stolen property and trafficking in stolen property. Is that right?
So you're saying, and this is important, we'll talk about something that got lost so that we've reported on it, you're singling out this part where they talk about, they only charge Stone for certain things, but you're saying that they took very seriously the possibility that people high in the Trump campaign would have been potentially involved or chargeable for those crimes.
Well, they said they considered it. Now, Mr. Mueller, I don't want you to tell me who you considered or how many people you considered, but it's a fact, is it not, based on your report, that this was something that you considered at least against one individual in the Trump campaign.
And given that we have a former representative of a Trump official, play us out, if you would, the counter-argument. Isn't the counter-argument, and Republicans in the committee will certainly stick to this, if Bob Mueller, of all people, turned everything over, squeezed Michael Cohen and Paul Manafort and didn't charge, doesn't that mean, boy, if there was a case, he didn't find it?
That would be an argument I may make in terms of specific individuals. But I think why Nick is so right on the money is that the questioning needs to be so pointed. You'll notice his questions weren't open-ended. So we're not going to hear these Muellerisms, these double negatives. We did not conclude that he did not commit a crime, and you kind of have to think it over in your mind multiple times. Only leave it open to a skilled cross-examination. You get them to go along with your narrative. So you continue talking, and it's a yes or no question, and it's just yes, boom, no, boom, and you get your narrative out there. And that's what's going to be so important. If Democrats or Republicans, really, if they want to shape whatever narrative they've got, they can't. It's not going to be a quotation from Bob Mueller. It's going to be their quote and him acknowledging yes or no.
Right, which really goes to the question. You have not all seen this story the same way, and I've interviewed you previously, so I happen to know that. I think our viewers may know about that. But each of you are zeroing in on what could make or break Wednesday, which is, do these people who live their lives as politicians find it in their oath of office to step back from that and do skillful questioning that informs the public? Or are they, to quote, to paraphrase, not quote, to paraphrase Richard Stengel, or are they out there thirst trapping for a Perry Mason moment?
I do think this is I'm not going to say that name again. This is the moment where they have to become patriots and become statesmen and say, we have to educate the public about this. Volume 1, you have to educate the public about the fact that we were attacked in a comprehensive way by a foreign adversary. Whether or not the Trump campaign worked with them or not is almost doesn't matter.
And volume 2, did the president commit crimes to cover that up, even if he wasn't charged in the first?
I got to fit in a break him if he wasn't the president of the United States.
Richard, a.k.a. Perry, Caroline, and Nick Ackerman with the visual aid. Hey, I'm Ari Melber from MSNBC. You can see more of our videos right here, or better yet, subscribe to our YouTube channel below. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you're here with us, and we appreciate that.